PlayStation just had their first State of Play Japan, which is an interesting remix on some of the things they've done on the usual State of Play format. For one thing, we had an actual host this time around, and while many of the trailers were still using English language, the presentation itself was done entirely in Japanese with subtitles. Part of the idea with this is that while this presentation was made, internationally available, and there's absolutely news that's going to apply to everyone across the world, there was a particular emphasis on stuff relevant to both consumers in Japan, as well as focusing on devs based in Asia. That said, as far as how the presentation itself went, it was fine. There are a couple things I think some people are going to be a little frustrated with, primarily the fact that when it comes to a lot of big name companies, we basically just got updates on games that we already know about. I think there's always that thirst for, some kind of big new reveal, and that really didn't happen here. Although there are a couple specific updates that I think are worth being excited about, even if they aren't the thing that made or break the show. But before we talk about games though, I actually want to talk about hardware, because this is something they kind of snuck in at the very end of the presentation. They segued into just basically a general pitch about why the PS5 is a cool piece of tech and why people should own one, probably targeting folks that are still on PS4s and looking to upgrade. But the real reason they did this segment was to drop two pretty big pieces of news. One, we're getting a new PlayStation branded monitor. In the past, Sony has made gaming focused monitors they've advertised alongside PlayStation, for instance their InZone line of monitors, but this is straight up a PlayStation monitor. It has PS5 style branding, it has the white and black going on the back of its shell, and probably the most interesting detail, the fact that it actually has a built-in DualSense charger that swivels out right below the display, so when you're not playing, you can just hook the controller there and charge it up. Which on the one hand is a little tacky, but on the other hand, I actually kind of like that. The idea of having a cleaned up desktop setup where if you know a DualSense is your go-to main controller, that's kind of a nifty feature. Now as far as specs go for this monitor, outside of the fact that it has that little charging hook, this is a 27-inch 1440p monitor that does support HDR. It has a 240 Hz refresh rate, although when you're using it with a PS5, obviously you're really only going to take advantage of half of that since that caps out at 120 frames. Although it is worth noting it is also a variable refresh rate monitor, so for any games that don't run on the PS5 quite as smoothly as we wish it did, those are going to be able to take advantage of that when used with this monitor. As far as ports go, it's got a pair of 2.1 HDMI, a single display port that's 1.4, two USB Type A's and one USB Type C, and it does have built-in speakers as well as a 3.5mm jack. The thing I really find interesting about this isn't just simply the fact that PlayStation made a monitor, but how much this is really pushing forward what I think has become a new focus for PlayStation over the last couple years of extending outside of the traditional gaming accessory bubble and really turning PlayStation into a bit more of a tech lifestyle brand. I've already talked about this a little bit when they did things like doing the Pulse Explorer, where instead of, big over-ear headphones like the regular Pulse headsets that you would normally associate with gaming, they made some wireless little earbuds. More recently, we got the reveal of the Pulse Elevate, which are some actual desktop-style speakers that did get a shout-out in this presentation as well. And now this monitor to complete the collection. There's this idea, I think, that there is a level of PlayStation fan where their main way of interacting with gaming is via PlayStation, and they are willing to invest in having a whole bunch of just PlayStation specific tech that builds up the ecosystem. You're using your PlayStation monitor with your PlayStation speakers to do a desktop PlayStation setup, and when you're not playing that setup, you're going to be accessing it remotely by playing on your PlayStation Portal and listening to your PlayStation Explorer earbuds. There's just this whole concept of having as many different PlayStation accessories and pieces of hardware that fill out a gaming and just really tech general lifestyle that I think PlayStation is really trying to branch into. Very curious though how we're actually going to see these work out performance-wise, doing an actual setup with the Elevates with this new monitor. I'm curious if there's going to be any kind of actual synergy between these products, extra reasons why you might want to be using PlayStation branded stuff with PlayStation branded stuff. It's an interesting push, and I think there is a type of fan out there who's going to be just investing in these right out the gate. I'm curious though what their goals are for this and whether or not the actual consumer demand is going to show up for it. And then the other bit of hardware news they dropped that I'm not going to go quite as in depth on is the fact that they are releasing a Japan exclusive PS5. This isn't like a special edition thing, this is an economics thing. Similar to what Nintendo did with the Switch 2, they are making a Japan exclusive version of the all digital PS5 that is restricted to the Japanese region as far as the type of stuff it can run, and it is being sold at a lower, more aggressive price point, making a more affordable entry option into the PS5, specifically in Japan. Now, as far as actual game announcements go, again, when it comes to a lot of the big name companies, I think the problem that some people are going to have with this particular presentation is that it was basically just updates on things we already know about. We got a lot of additional trailers for games we've already seen, like the upcoming remake of Fatal Frame 2. We got another look at Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. We got a look at upcoming DLC for some other already released games, like the most recent Monster Hunter, as well as Elden Ring. And a lot of these individual announcements are still cool in terms of what we're getting. Like with Fatal Frame, they revealed a new digital deluxe edition for the game. For Elden Ring, we actually got to see some of the new DLC in action, including the fact that Artorias is being added as a boss, so I have to kill that guy again, as well as brief looks at what looks to be new characters you can play in Nightreign. Octopath Traveler 0 got a nice little shadow drop announcement of a demo, and it is the style where you can start playing it and then transfer your data over to the complete version of the game, so if you're planning on picking that up, not a whole lot of reasons to not check out the demo unless you just really want to wait till release day for that full game experience. And Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is actually a really interesting one because I feel like if you don't already know the plot of Dragon Quest VII, it didn't seem like we saw anything completely brand new in this trailer, when in fact, it's actually kind of a big deal what they showed when you know what happens in DQ7. So that's something I'm personally very curious about because I want to know what new plot is being added in this version of the game, but that's really getting the weeds of just already knowing DQ7's plot in the first place. For Monster Hunter, we got to look at new monsters being added in later DLC. Sonic Crossworlds announced more free DLC where these are the character packs that are Sega-owned properties, so it's not something you have to buy to add to the game, including Ai from Super Monkey Ball, Knights from Nights into Dreams, and a pair of Sonic characters that I'm going to be real, I have no idea who they are. And then when it comes to first-party Sony games, there was really only one big announcement, which was that we are going to be getting a second closed beta for Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. That's going to be happening at the start of December. It's going from, I think, December 5th through 7th, and that is something you can register for right now. On top of just being a further test of the gameplay, this is also adding new content relative to the past beta tests they did, including new playable fighters, Spider-Man and Ghost Rider, as well as a look at some new stages. We did not, however, get any kind of like brand new reveal information as far as things like new characters coming to the game. This is one of those kind of presentations where it's like, in a void, none of these individual pieces of news are bad. Some of this is really cool. I'm glad to know that there is a new beta happening for Marvel Tokon. I'm excited that there's a shadow drop demo for Octopath Traveler 0. But none of these are really the kind of announcements that I think people are just hoping to see when there's presentations like this. I oftentimes think people have maybe way too high of expectations of the kind of news we're gonna get, but usually there's that hope that there's gonna be like that one big reveal or that one big thing, which I think this time around Nightreign was meant to be that reveal, which was cool, but I just think it wasn't quite a big enough thing to balance out the rest of the show. That said, something the show also did that I personally appreciate, but I understand why it doesn't get a lot of people hyped. There was a great showcasing of a lot of smaller games coming from Japanese devs that I absolutely do want to try out. We got to look at a new standalone version of Copy Talk that takes place in Tokyo. There was this new platformer they revealed called Motion Wreck, where you just play this little cute robot and you navigate your way through platforming challenges by recording your movements and then playing those movements back in order to navigate your way through later platforming challenges. I also just really dug the art style in this one. And then one that I'm a little mixed on right now, but I do think has some potential, was a game they showed called Nevergrave, The Witch and the Curse. This is a 2D action roguelite, which like the core bones of that is something that I've played quite a few games of that style, and it looked fine. What really is, I think, the kind of interesting twist or selling point of this one is that one of the things you can do is take control of enemies by putting your witch hat on them and using their powers, whether that's giving you ways of navigating around the terrain or just attacks to use against enemies, including one quick scene we saw where you possess a cat and then you just roll on the floor so cutely that it stuns the enemies around you, which is such a great idea. I don't think this was the worst state of play PlayStation has ever done, at least off the top of my head. I would need to really go over all of them and rank them, which I'm just not doing in this given moment, but I think the big problem this one really ran into is that it just felt like a status update for a lot of things we already know about, and then there were some new reveals where, you know, if you can appreciate smaller publishers and indies, there was some cool stuff to see, but I don't think that's what a lot of people are tuning into this presentation for. Really, my big takeaway personally is that I'm going to play that Octopath Traveler demo tonight. I'm going to register for that closed beta for Marvel Tokon so I can be really terrible playing that, but still enjoy myself. And I want to learn more about all this hardware that Sony's releasing and hopefully go hands-on with it when it starts releasing and really see how it stands up to other options out there other than just having, you know, the power of brand naming. So those are just some quick highlights and my thoughts on today's State of Play Japan. I will say that while again, not the strongest presentation, I am interested in this format, you know, as it happens just because of the genres I enjoy and the kind of games I like to play. I tend to play a lot of stuff that is made by Japanese developers, and so I'm very interested in if this is going to be a thing they continue to moving forward, where they actually have branded showcases with that kind of intent right at the gate. Maybe that also gives us a little bit better idea of what to expect from non-Japan state of plays. I'm curious to see if this is something that's going to be an actual recurring segment, and not a one-off they did in order to just simply show off that, by the way, here's this cheaper region-locked version of the system. As always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet. As always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all later.